All right. Welcome to the Sedated Man, episode 58. This is a special edition. It's Issues with Men in the Military, an interview with former Lieutenant Colonel Mike Yaeger. Mike, I want to thank you for coming on. Thanks for showing up, buddy.
Hey, it's my pleasure, Mike. It's good to see you again.
Now, what I didn't tell anybody is Mike and I go a little ways back. I'll give a little background before I have Mike give his. I was in the National Guard 24 years. Mike is still currently in the National Guard, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So I remember way back in the day when I was an E6 staff sergeant, and I was told, this wasn't you, Mike. I was told, hey, by the way, there's a guy who used to be an E7 who's been busted down. He's your soldier now. And I was like, what? What am I supposed to do with a guy that used to be leadership? So I learned how to do it. Then come years later, I come into another unit, and I meet Mike, and we hit it off right away. And I come to find out he's a former lieutenant colonel who at the time was an E5, just a regular sergeant. I'll let him tell if he wants to about why that was. And so here I was yet again with leadership under me. So, which you would think was awkward, but Mike was far from awkward. Mike has a very, very unique perspective on military leadership and men in the military because he was a lieutenant colonel for quite a few years, I believe. But I'll let him tell that. Mike, what's your? Why don't you go ahead and tell everybody who you are and what your background is?
Well, to start with, grew up in Montana. Grew up on a ranch over in Lewistown. Left for the Army 3 days after high school graduation, and spent 3 years on active duty as a Huey mechanic crew chief. And decided active duty wasn't for me. Get out and use college benefits. Well, at that point, then I stumble into the ROTC department and decide that, well, ROTC cadets get $100 a month. So I'd be really dumb not to do this.
So was that when Fred Flintstone was in ROTC?
What's that?
I said, was that when Fred Flintstone was in ROTC?
He was the class ahead of me. I was the class behind him. So the goal was always to go to flight school, but I couldn't pass the EKG. So I ended up in tanks as an Army lieutenant, 3 years as a platoon leader, 2 years as an XO. I commanded Bravo Company 2 Armor as a captain, and then I later commanded the Cav troop here in Helena, Montana, part of the 11th ACR out of NTC. So 2 commands back to back. Probably the most fun in my entire career. I had the highest scoring, highest manned, best tank company in the Second Armor. It was Bravo there in Missoula. And then the Cav troop was you're talking 170 guys, 9 tanks, 13 Bradleys. I mean, it was cool. It was sexy. That was really cool. So then you roll into, you become a major, and then you're like a field grade second lieutenant. You got staff jobs and death by PowerPoint, all that really cool stuff. So in 2008, I deployed to Afghanistan, and I was actually promoted while I was over there to lieutenant colonel. And I was in an ETT, which the Iraqi guys would know them as mid-teens. Ate, slept, trained, and did missions with the Afghans. In fact, I never did an American mission the whole time. So came back from Afghanistan, and here's where really my journey took kind of an unexpected path. We left Afghanistan on the 7th of December, and on the 11th of December, I'm sitting in my living room. I mean, it was crazy fast. And so over time, I started self-medicating with alcohol. and, just the usual returning home kind of stuff. But, I was having some trouble. So long story short, not everybody gets to be a bird colonel. Not everybody gets to be a general. And as the pyramid narrows at the top, I was non-selected for retention. Now, I could have kept my rank and gone to the Army Reserve, but I'm not a reservist. I'm a National Guardsman.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have rather gone from O5 to E5 than go to the Army Reserve. So, long story short, I really reacquainted myself with Christ Jesus through Alcoholics Anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
I've been sober for going on 7 years now, and I got to do ALC in July, and then I make E6, so that's another bump there. But so that's kind of where I've gotten to where I am, and I left the full-time force. I now work for a company here in Atlanta. I went from 55 employees to 0, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
At least a nice change a little bit. So that's kind of how I got to where I'm at.
That's awesome. Well, what nobody knows is that Mike here started a trend, because as soon as I got in the unit, not only was Mike a former, I would have Sargent. Now there's a lot of people listening who have no idea all the acronyms that we're using. Okay. And quite honestly, I'm not going to go through them all right now. Everybody has an Army buddy. Ask them. Okay. So, all right. Yeah. We use a lot of acronyms. I was a sergeant first class, which is a step below first sergeant. Mike was moving towards E6 when I retired last year. He went to another unit. And, like I said, I wanted to interview Mike because he has a very unique perspective. Even though he's only moving towards E6 right now, he led troops. He saw men in the beginning, and he saw men toward the end of his leadership, and he still sees men now. And there's a couple of things I want to cover specifically. That's why the title of this podcast is Issues with Men in the Military. I think too many men. Okay, so there's an attack on men. We all know that. That's old news. All right, toxic masculinity is this big ridiculous thing, and really the most ridiculous thing is that it's actually a thing. So we have a lot of fathers who want to step back from their sons and say, "Oh, they're okay." Oh, maybe they need some Army time. Oh, maybe they need some military time. And I don't think they understand that the people still have this 1950s view of the military. They still have this window that says, "Oh, military will fix them right up." And would you say, okay, you're already shaking your head. Would you disagree with that?
I think the military, and it truly makes my heart sick to say this.
Yeah.
In some aspects, I think the military is not much better than academia. Mm-hmm. They need to go with the tools they need. You're right. They're not going to get that crusty old sergeant, to knock them around a little bit and teach them what's right.
Yeah.
Some of the briefings and some of the programs, stuff that, my first helmet was a steel pot. Yep. My first issue weapon was a 38 revolver. I go back a ways. And these kids, well, all you have to do, really, let me back up a little bit. You're talking about fathers who are in the picture.
Well, yeah, that's a good point.
Because I think part of what academia and society and the military and everybody struggles with is fathers who are not in the picture. That's a whole different program for another day.
Yeah.
it's because I think that the audience you're speaking to is the guys who are wanting to do something positive, just maybe trying to figure out what that means to them and in their situation with their son.
Without making waves.
Well, and I tell you, the answer to toxic masculinity is good masculinity. And
Yeah.
even if the guy doesn't have a daughter, I recommend this book, and it's called Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters. And it was written by a Christian physician who was noticing all these girls with eating disorders. So a totally different subject from what we're talking about. But still, that book is basically the bottom line is, hey, you were there for the 15 minutes of fun. You
Yeah.
need to finish your job.
Yeah.
Don't care your marital status, don't care your location. You need to be as involved positively as you can be, because the most important thing you're going to do is produce a productive member of society.
Correct. And I'll put that book in the show notes. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. So, all right. So we got guys that want to throw their kids in the military. Would you say there's a tremendous difference between young men, say even 10 years ago, as compared to young men in the military today? And say it how you see it. I got you here, Mike.
You're throwing me softballs here.
Oh, the hard balls are coming.
There you go. I think the best example, because the answer is yes, there is a difference, even 10 years ago. We had a briefing last weekend at drill, and not 2 minutes into the briefing, the captain who was given it used a term like, hey guys, or mankind, or something like that. And he stopped the briefing to explain to the group so nobody felt bad that he's talking about everybody, not just the boys.
Okay.
And 10 years ago, I would have said, Captain, what are you doing?
Yeah. Just
I don't get it.
on. Yeah.
And that's he didn't come to us that way. The modern military has made him that way.
Yeah. Well, they want to apologize, well, that's a whole different discussion too. Okay, so here's the deal. So military has several programs in place, and this has always kind of been my angst. All right. Well, okay, let me back up even a little more. Let me give my 10-year view. Or even a little further, when I first got into the military, the sergeants were old, fat, and smokers. And you probably remember those guys, okay? And they were the crusty old sergeants, and they were cantankerous. And every time you do a physical training test, PT test, you would smoke them in the run. Just, hey, and they'd be back there, hawking up a lung because they had a cigarette just before they started. So here you advance 20 years. Now I'm the crusty old sergeant. And I get it. I get the attitude as the crusty old sergeant, and I don't have a problem with it. But younger guys are coming in, and here I am as an older sergeant. I don't work out on a regular basis because I have a schedule that's very difficult to do so with as a civilian plumber. And here I am smoking 20 and 25-year-olds on the run as the old sergeant. And I tell those guys every time I go by them, you're going to let your old fat sergeant pass you on this run. And then I just keep going. And so as I understand it, and in your position as lieutenant colonel, maybe you know this, it was our understanding that when the PT regimen, the training changed, because the Army did quite a few years ago, the Army did a substantial physical training change in the program. And one of the main reasons for that change was that the newer recruits coming in were having exceptional difficulties meeting if you're on the podcast, I'm air quoting the rigorous PT standards at the time. And so they had to come up with this whole new system that's called PRT. Is it PRT? PRT. Called PRT, to bring these now deficient males up to snuff so they can take a PT test. So do you have a take on that? I mean, as you were a colonel, I think you were a colonel when that first came out.
Sure. And I agree. I remember as a company commander having young, healthy, thin soldiers failing the PT test.
Yeah.
And my old first sergeant, Scotty McDonald was his name. He said, "Sir, they got no fire in the belly." And that always just kind of resonated with me. But adversity, pain, being uncomfortable, I think, we've created, really, if you look back 100 years, we've created a utopia of comfort and leisure and ease. My kids, I laugh when Wi-Fi goes down. I don't want it to go down right now.
Yeah.
But, if the electricity goes out, they're having a significant emotional event. And that would be a traumatic thing, because we as a society, we've never been hungry.
Yep.
Most of us, we've never been truly cold. An APFT, a physical fitness test, from front to finish is what, an hour?
Yeah. Roughly, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can pee on a spark plug for an hour. It's not, just get through it. But that mindset of, I guess, the ease with which they quit is something that I've noticed. And I think that translates back to everybody getting a trophy, the self-esteem movement.
Yeah.
Those things.
You're referring to participation trophies.
Right.
Thanks for showing.
Yep. And I can tell you, my daughter, she has ribbons on her wall. She's my little artist.
Yeah.
She has ribbons on her walls for her artwork. But then she's got a drawer. There's a bunch of ribbons in the drawer. Guess which ribbons are in the drawer? The participation ribbons.
Yeah.
She knows they don't mean anything. So soldiers coming to us, I think you look at, I don't remember the statistics right offhand, but half the recruits are coming in to the Army from a single parent household.
Yeah.
The vast majority of those are, that household is led by the mom.
Yep.
And I think we've told men and boys, especially white men and boys, and
Yeah.
You need to atone for the sins of the past, and you need to not do any of that stuff anymore. And this beta male, milk toast kind of thing. Now, let me back up 1 second. I talked with a retired teacher not long ago. He said the average kid of 30 years ago was the average kid of today. But he said the above average kid of today is better than the above average kid of 30 years ago.
Wow.
What I don't know is, do they stand out more because there's fewer of them? Or are they truly those boys, those young men who have had the influence of, of a positive male role model?
Yeah.
Dad is a noun, but it's also a verb. It's an action word. It really is.
Yeah.
And I always hope that I can be half the man my mother thinks I am. But, we should all strive to be better tomorrow than we are today. And I see with a lot of young soldiers that, it's good enough.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like a plague. It's good enough. It's interesting you brought that up, and I'll just say it. And I think Mike's being nice, which I'm not usually knowing him to do. So let me be direct. I have no problem with single women trying to raise their sons. That is not what the show is about. It's not about slamming women who are in a bad situation.
No,
okay.
no.
However, it is an actual fact. It's a statistical fact that boys who come from single households who were raised by their mothers only and had no positive male influence are not the same type of kid as one who comes from a household with both. And I don't think anybody would deny that or argue with it. But what they would argue with, I think, is that it's just not fair. Well, it doesn't matter that it's not fair. That's what's happening. And you're right on the money. Men have stepped away from that role. All they got to do is make a payment every month to be free. And suddenly being a dad doesn't matter, convenience. And so now I think you're right. A lot of those kids are coming in, and then they roll into guys like you and I. And guys like you and I are like, dude, that is not going to roll here. Mama might have got your slippers at home, but if you don't have those boots on right now, you're going to wish mama had never birthed you. So, it's difficult for me to watch young men now sign up for the military because I know what's going on in there. And, let's touch on one thing, for instance. And I think it was great you touched on the single mother household. It's absolutely true. They are different. I mean, and maybe you agree, maybe you disagree, that the kids that are coming in now don't think they should have to work as hard as they do. And part of that is because parents have done everything for their kids. And now they don't know what strain looks like. And I'm going to roll into my next subject here with this. They don't know what strain looks like. They don't know what tough decisions look like. They don't know what life looks like, what it feels like when you bump your face off the life wall, what it feels like when you bump your face off the life sidewalk. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I think I'm trying to think how best to say this, but
just say it in Mike Yaeger fashion.
Life is hard. Life is a struggle.
Yep.
And I also wonder, Mike, if part of what we're missing, and this is going to follow me as I drift here, part of it is we don't know our history. And what I mean by that, whether it's looking at political things or how to raise kids, I'm not saying there weren't sins in the past, but a lot of this stuff, there's nothing new under the sun. We were talking about LGBT stuff at drill. I said, this is nothing new. The Persians, the Babylonians, the Greeks, the Romans, human nature does not change.
Right.
And as much as we want heaven on earth, thanks to Adam and Eve, not going to happen. So get over it. And when I talk about history, there's times when I want to scream at the top of my lungs, go read a book. Now, granted, you've got Kindle and whatever on the smartphone. I actually own a smartphone now, if you can believe that.
Oh, wow. Look at you.
Yeah, my old one doesn't.
No more flip phone for that guy.
But there's so much. Well, the book of Proverbs.
Mm-hmm.
Every new recruit, I don't care if he's an atheist or a Muslim, whatever. Let's just call it good reading. Every new recruit should read Proverbs.
It's wisdom.
It's wisdom. Yeah. And, I'll let you take it for a second.
All right. And so for those of you who might be wondering, I keep looking over my shoulder. My youngest son is sitting in the room because he and Mike have a friendship as well. You can lean in, say hello. That's my youngest son right there. He's 18. He graduates high school next month. So if you see me look like this, that's what I'm doing. He was curious how this whole podcast thing works. So, all right. So let me segue then into what I was talking about. And now this, I don't want people to think the show is all about bashing the military. It's not. The military in and of itself is an excellent organization with a ton of excellent people, but it has got foundation issues. And if they don't fix the foundation issues, the house will fall. I mean, anybody who knows Roman history knows that the Romans didn't fall because they got conquered. They fell because they spread themselves too thin and let politics take over. Okay. So there's your extra nugget. Okay. Now, I want to segue off of the entitled kids into suicide prevention within the military. Now, I'm going to say that I think personally, and you may disagree with me, I think personally the Army, because I can only speak Army, but the Army suicide prevention program is a complete and utter waste of time. The program, I mean, it's like thinking about pink elephants. All right. If I tell you don't think about pink elephants, the first thing that pops into your head is pink elephants. The Army suicide prevention program is very much the same way. Don't think about it, don't do it. Don't think about it, don't do it. Don't think about it. And so it's always at the forefront. And our numbers, especially in Montana, are higher than national average.
And the surprising thing is, it's young kids who have never deployed who are our biggest problems in that area. The last suicide prevention briefing I went to, you know me, Mike, I raised my hand at the end. I said, I'm confused.
Every time, yeah.
Why are you confused? I said, anyone who has been around for more than a day knows that we as human beings are body, mind, and spirit. You didn't talk anything about the spirit part. I think a lot of our ills, a lot of our, going back to the father issues, we have a God-shaped hole in our collective hearts. And it's going to get filled with something.
Yeah.
And I think it was Dennis Prager. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He talks about that our society, and I agree with you on the military, we're living on cut flower prosperity. Take flowers out of the garden, you cut them, you put them in a vase. They're going to live for a while. But without that foundation, you said it very well, the foundational problems, without the soil and those things within the soil, the morals and ethics and values, eventually those flowers die.
Yeah.
And before I ever joined the Army, I kind of knew what Army values were. Now we have to have the list of Army values.
In case you forget.
And there's a reason they did that. I had a chance to talk with active duty drill sergeant, and he said, sir, we got to explain to these kids that stealing is wrong. Lying is wrong. They come to us, very diverse backgrounds.
Yep.
Kids with no foundation of what right looks like. And I think back to what I was saying, that God-shaped hole in our collective heart, we're going to fill that with something. We're going to fill it with social media. We're going to fill it with alcohol or drugs or working out.
Yep.
You have issues and you're contemplating suicide, doing extra reps on the bench press isn't going to make you feel better.
No.
There's something else that you're not getting, that's not coming to you.
Yeah.
And that's, uh, you know, we tell our kids beginning in high school, probably grade school, I don't know, that we're just a higher form of animal. But we're the only being on the earth that can reason.
Yeah.
We're not descended from monkeys, and we're not just a higher version of a monkey. So there's more to us. There's more that goes into making this machine work
Mm-hmm.
than just instinct and biology and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And I've had soldiers literally weeping in my office because it's like a light was turned on.
Yeah.
That nobody ever expected me. I mean, I'm punishing this kid. We're taking pay.
Yeah.
We're busting him a rank or whatever. But he's in tears, not because he's losing his rank and a month's worth of pay.
Yeah.
He's frustrated because he's just had an epiphany that why hasn't anyone told me about this stuff before?
Yeah.
It's crazy. I remember I got called into the Sergeant Major's office as a captain.
You don't mess with the Sergeant Major.
Yeah, if you're a captain, you think I'll rank a Sergeant Major. But he said, Captain, I was told you docked a guy a day's pay because he didn't have a haircut. And I said, yes. He said, you can't do that. We're going to lose him. You know, it's all about recruiting and retention.
Yeah.
And I said, Sergeant Major, on Sunday of drill, because he went and got a haircut.
Yeah.
I didn't pay him for Friday night. But on Sunday afternoon of drill, he re-enlisted.
Oh.
And he came to me in person and said, you guys were right. I was letting it slide. It won't happen again. And nobody wants to belong to a mediocre organization. I truly believe at our core, we want to be cool or good or outstanding. We want to do great things. It's embedded in us, certainly as men, but also as Americans.
Yeah.
We don't have to lose. And I think the more we lower standards, the more we let things slide, it becomes, why don't we just call it a get together?
Yeah.
No. And I think part of where we're headed with this too is I know the premise for simulation is cost cutting and access to training and all of that stuff. But the more you simulate, the less you get dirt all over you.
Yeah.
It's not the same. Because you can go in the beam hit all day long, but when you get a stoppage on the range with your M16, you're like, well, the computer never did this. I don't know what to do now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Going back to the suicide prevention thing, and you're right on the money there. I have a theory. So this is my theory. I think that suicide rates are higher amongst military and the younger military for a primary reason. You've got these kids who have had everything handed to them. They've had everything done for them. All right. They've never had to make a hard choice. They get in the military. Things are hard. Hard choices come. Hard people come. And suicide is an easy choice. I'm done. I'll show you. Because they've never understood the importance of the weight of a decision like that, because they don't understand weighty decisions. And so when things get tough, they do what they did as a kid. They check out. Mentally, as a kid, they checked out. Now they're just going to check out because it's easier. It's easier to think of no more problems than it is to think, how am I going to power through this? Because they were never taught how to power through it.
I just remembered as you were talking about that, I was looking at my nephew. He's an Iraq veteran, lives out in Seattle. Go Cub Scouts. But he showed me a post from one of his buddies. He said, I'm kind of worried about him. And the post the kid put on his whatever was, I want to drown in a sea of Novocaine.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow. It took me a minute to even, I don't know. But that permanent solution to a temporary problem, I think you're right that, you know, we try and let our kids make decisions. And as they get older, those decisions we let them make get more complex and they get more permanent and to the point where then they grow up and leave the house.
Yeah.
And but if you haven't had that training beforehand and life does get tough, it's very foreign to me to go to
That extreme.
that level of despair.
Yeah.
That it would be so, life would be so horrible. And
But
what I
do
always
they,
think,
but do they really perceive it as despair?
and that's where I'm having a hiccup there, is because I think you're right. I don't think they fully grasp the permanence of what they're contemplating.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's unfortunate, but really, I think the suicide prevention needs to turn, I think it needs to get off the, I think it would be good if they could get rid of there. I have a lot of thoughts about it. I'm just trying to get them all out. So they've got it geared towards kids of that generation. The problem is if they are not contemplating the weight of those decisions, gearing your training towards that is not going to help them. It's going to help them continue to think what they always thought. And I really think there needs to be more of a mentorship program between older soldiers, younger soldiers. There needs to be more discussion. There needs to be more understanding. And there needs to be a lot more discussion on day-to-day stuff. You know, I mean, they have powwows a lot of times. You get some sergeants that just scream at their Joes, and you get other sergeants that actually talk to their Joes. And I would be curious to see what the suicide rates are amongst the guys who talk to their Joes as compared to the guys who scream at their Joes. Because these new kids, a lot of them, not all of them, a lot of them can't take it.
Well, and I do think you have to meet. Let me back up. A young person meets all the criteria to get in the military. He passes basic training in AIT. He's now a soldier. He's met all the criteria to do that. So really, I think it's incumbent upon the first line leaders to meet those soldiers where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
And just like a commander makes an assessment of a unit before he goes charging in and making changes or trying to do whatever, I think that one-on-one assessment of, okay, I got Johnny Tent Peg in, he's my new soldier. Who are you? Where are you from? What have you done? Where that is at? Because some of them are bulletproof. And you knew soldiers who were just, you're like, wow, I wish I had 10 of those.
Yeah.
But the ones that need a little extra care and feeding, you got to meet them where they're at and bring them up to where they should be. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to close this out here, Mike. Just one thing I want to throw out to guys. Once again, this is not a bash the military show. That's not the point of this. I want you guys to know that when your kids enter the military is not there to fix what you didn't do. It's not there to make it better for you. It's not there to make your son or your daughter, for that matter, you know, be all you can be. I haven't heard that in a while because I haven't seen it in a while. All right. Your kids will be who you are, not who you want them to be. And if you're lazy, they'll be lazy. If you don't take that serious and you expect somebody else to fix it, they're going to expect somebody else to fix it. So that's the example you set. So if you are within your own congregations and you're hiding, I would strongly encourage you to quit hiding. And if you want to make a difference, if you want to see strong young men enter the military, start teaching Sunday school and work your way up from there.
Well, and you should record that and put it on the internet, Mike.
I'm going to.
There you go. I think we're seeing, I don't want to get into a whole nother vein, but just one quick point. We're seeing what non-action has done. We see it in congregations. Many congregations have embraced all kinds of social changes that are not biblical. Right. That is happening because strong men are remaining silent. And I've made a commitment, and I believe it's one that God honors. I'm not going to be rude, but I'm not going to be silent. I'm going to be respectful, but I'm going to speak truth. And I'm going to use logic and common sense and reason, and I'm going to encourage other people to read a book, read an article, preferably not the New York Times or the Washington Post, but educate yourself. Be a man, step up, and we're not talking the toxic masculinity. Good masculinity. Be the spiritual leader of your home. That's where it starts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Mike, I want to thank you for coming on. And for those of you who are watching the video and you want to listen to the podcast, you can find us on anchor.fm and on iTunes, Pocket Cast, Overcast, Radio Public, Castbox, Breaker, and Spotify, and I'm sure a few others as well. If you're listening to the podcast, you want to see the video, you can watch it on Facebook and YouTube. Just look for The Sedated Man. You can also find us on Instagram. If you want to talk to me directly, you can reach me at mike@thesedatedman.com. And if anybody has questions for Mike, just send them here and I'll make sure that he gets them as well. And I will put the show notes. I will put the link to the book, Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters. And you can find those on patreon.com/thesedatedman. If you have any questions for me as far as mentoring, public speaking, or even parenting advice, please don't hesitate to email me and let me know. Mike, once again, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, Mike. God bless you and your listeners. And we'll try and get down there for Keegan's party.
Absolutely.
I'll stay in touch.